Hello and welcome to Camp Kaiju Monster Movie Reviews. We're your hosts, Vincent Hannum.
I'm Matt Levine.
And joining us today is a special guest host.
I am Gary Dansu. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we handled that well. Thank you, Gary. Gary joined us, for those of you who don't know, on our season 1 episode where Gary and I broke down, or just really kind of talked about, A Quiet Place Part 2. And just about a year later, I was very happy to have Gary accept the invitation to come on back and talk about another new release, Jurassic World Dominion, the final entry in the Jurassic World franchise. And we have a lot to talk about.
Indeed.
Before we get started, I just want to say thank you all for following along and hanging out with us on the social medias, on the podcasts. We really appreciate it. We got a lot of cool things coming down the pike that we'll get to at the end of this episode, including Kai July, the theme for July. We had our road trip. It was fun. It was exhausting, but we're happy to be home now and kick back with some familiar favorites. So 50s, 60s Japanese kaiju films, what they are. Again, stay tuned to the end of this episode. Matt, do you have anything to add?
I'll just leave it at that for now. There's some exciting stuff coming up. More to come on that. We have something fun planned for August as well, so stay tuned for all that info. Nice.
Gary, do you have anything to add?
I don't at this time.
Thanks for joining, by the way, Gary.
It's great. I'm thrilled to be here. This is I have a lot to say about this movie, but either way, it's all fun. It's all fun, to talk about this film today.
Yeah. Gary, what is your personal history, as much as history as you can have, with Jurassic World Dominion coming, or the franchise as a whole?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have to say, sometimes we talk about our favorite movies, and that's tough. That's how, what's your favorite movie? I would say I have a top 5 of movies to watch to understand Gary Dansu better. Jurassic Park is absolutely on that list. It is, and with that said, it is one of my favorite movies. I think it's one of the greatest blockbusters ever made. I think it's the perfect blend of cerebral intelligence and just action thrill, while also appealing to people 10 and up. With that said, I did see this in the theaters at time of release in 1993 when I was 5 years old.
Really?
I remember it very fondly. And then I've watched it dozens of times since, with my high school friends, my childhood friends. We've watched it over and over again. During my buddy's bachelor party last year, we watched it.
Yeah.
It has a lot of meaning and for me, and I love the first one. I've realized, I thought about this today, I have seen each Jurassic Park franchise movie in the theaters. So I also saw the sequel, The Lost World, in theaters, Jurassic Park 3 in theaters. None of the films have quite lived up to the first one, as we'll discuss. But I do kind of, as we talk about the movie, I'll say that my love of the first film, it's sort of that acknowledgement that there's a sort of intelligence and great character work in it, along with the action and thrills and monster mayhem.
Yeah.
That colors how I have received subsequent films. So yeah, that's my relationship to this movie.
That's great.
Yeah.
Matt, did you want to add anything? Where do you come from?
Yeah, no, I'm with Gary. I really love the original Jurassic Park. I think it's one of the best blockbusters ever made. And I'm aging myself a little bit, but I also saw it in theaters when it first came out when I was 9 or 10, must have been 9 actually. And it was one of those movie going experiences that just makes, you fall in love with movies at a young age with movies like that, But like the sequels have not lived up to it, obviously. I do enjoy the Lost World Jurassic Park. I think it's Spielberg doing his Godzilla imitation, which is kind of fun at times. The third one is fun, but like certainly like a level weaker than the first two. And I would say like the sequel trilogy, the Jurassic World movies, are like not just a level lower, but like a totally different like planet, like an inferior planet, in my opinion. A little bit harsh, but that's my take. And yeah, so if you're expecting everything to live up to the original Jurassic Park, it's definitely not going to. But still, I wish the level of quality was a little bit closer.
Sure. I feel like I'm dating myself now with age. I did not see Jurassic Park in the theaters. I've never felt so young before. The first movie
you would have been 2 years old, Vince. You would, yeah. I mean, you are the youngest of the three of us.
Thank you. The first one I saw in theaters was Jurassic Park 3. I was about 10. And even then, as much as I loved it, even then I went, wow, that movie was over in the blink of an eye. It's like 80 minutes. It's a really quick movie. Be that as it may, with Jurassic World, I saw it with Gary back when it came out, and we had a great time. I thought it for this franchise, I thought it set the bar in a really good place. Coming from Jurassic Park 3, I liked seeing it go in a different direction. With that said, I wasn't like totally in love with Fallen Kingdom, and Dominion, I felt I was even less on board with for reasons we'll get into, specific reasons. So that's awesome. Do you guys want to just read the synopsis briefly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
go for it.
I'll start off. So the movie takes place after Fallen Kingdom in a new world defined by the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs. Surprisingly, the world's ecosystems have not collapsed, and the humans have managed to contain these respective dinosaur populations in parks, reserves, and sanctuaries.
One such reserve belongs to Dodgson, yes, the Barbasol-loving undercover agent from the original, who is now leading a transnational genetic research company called Biosyn. Dodgson's secret master plan is to release genetically enhanced locusts on the Earth's grain supplies, thereby forcing consumers to buy only his grain.
Dr. Sattler suspects something is up and convinces a heartsick Dr. Grant to travel with her to Dodson's dinosaur-laden research park high in the Swiss Alps. There they reunite with Dr. Ian Malcolm, who happens to be lecturing for the company. Meanwhile, Owen Grady and Claire Dearing are in a committed relationship and caring for the clone girl from Fallen Kingdom, who is promptly kidnapped by the omnipresent Dodson Corporation. In Grady and Deering's quest to save the girl, they inevitably cross paths with Grant and company. Dinosaurs escape, chaos ensues, and the usual.
That's about it.
Yeah.
I think the plot sounds absolutely ludicrous when you really think about it and you write it and you type it out. I was like, there's not evil, but there's a shady megalomaniac corporation with a secret headquarters in the Swiss Alps. I'm correct on that, right? Like they were in Switzerland.
I think it's in Italy, maybe, but same idea for sure.
Yeah, like these snow-capped mountains.
Mm-hmm.
It all seems very James Bond when you put it that way. Which
yeah, we should talk about that because that was something I think about. There's some James Bondian elements in this film.
Yeah. For better or for worse.
Yeah, for better or for worse. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and this synopsis I think doesn't even have like quite all the elements in the movie, which would be like a very long and even more ridiculous synopsis, like the black market and stuff like that, and like the character of the airplane pilot who helps them out for very vague reasons. So this was like the most concise version of a synopsis that we could do, and it still sounds pretty ridiculous. So it says a lot about
I will say, I'll give a quick marketing review. Because I watch I can't help it. I watch trailers. I read up on these movies. And there was a lot in this movie that I'm not saying it was necessarily good, but that I was introduced to upon watching the movie, such as the locusts. And like there were certain elements that were not introduced in the marketing at all. That I was like, at least I came to the film and was like, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen. What's this all about? Because sometimes when you're a movie fan, you can kind of track these movies and then everything's sort of spoiled for you by the time you actually get to it. So
Yeah, there might have been some slight, it was sort of spoilerish what I said before, so I apologize, but hopefully I didn't reveal too much.
well, no, I think this is a spoiler review.
Yeah, a couple
yeah.
things. So there will be spoilers in this review for everybody. That's just the only way we can talk specifically about the film.
Yeah.
Secondly, to the marketing, Gary, it's interesting you brought that up. Yes, it left a lot to be discovered in the film, but I think the marketing absolutely misled me into thinking that I was going to get one movie and I got a completely different movie. Again, for better or for worse, I was less interested in the movie I got than the one I was promised.
For sure. Because sometimes that could be a good thing. Sometimes it could be a very bad thing. Yeah.
Gary, if you want to expound upon the cast and crew,
yeah,
I think we can go
Let's
for that.
do that. So our main cast here, we got Chris Pratt is Owen Grady. We got the great Bryce Dallas Howard is Claire Dearing. We have Laura Dern as Ellie Sadler from the original, previously seen in Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 3. We've got Sam Neill as Alan Grant, previously also seen Jurassic Park 3. Jeff Goldblum is Ian Malcolm, also again seen as Jurassic Park, and Jurassic Park is the Lost World. I just feel the need to point these things out.
Yeah.
And then we have Campbell Scott as Dodson. And as you may know, Dodson was a brief character in the original Jurassic Park, not played by Campbell Scott, but yep, Campbell Scott plays him in this movie. And then we have DeWanda Weiss as a newer character, Kayla Watts. Mamadou Athie as another new character, Ramsey Cole. B.D. Wong as Dr. Henry Wu, who again was in the original Jurassic Park and has been seen in the new Jurassic World movies, and Omar Sy playing Barry Sembany, returning from Jurassic World. I'll also note we also have Isabella Sermon, who plays Maisie Lockwood, Clone Girl from Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. This movie is directed by Colin Trevorrow, who directed the first movie in the Jurassic World films. He did not direct the second, the Lost Kingdom. And then the writers it is a screenplay by Colin Trevorrow and Emily Carmichael, who notably wrote the screenplay for Pacific Rim Uprising.
Right. Sorry, Gary, I'm just that was Pacific Rim Uprising that Emily Carmichael helped co-write.
Yeah, did I say that? Are you losing me?
You did say that. It was a little in and out with your mic.
Oh, sorry, my video went out. Yeah, Emily Carmichael contributed or wrote the screenplay of Pacific Uprising, the sequel to Pacific Rim.
Cool. And if that happens, Gary, since we're not live, I can stop us and just repeat what we said.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Just let me know.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah. Well, hey, before we get into production, Matt, do you want to add anything? I saw you jumping at the bit there a little bit.
Oh no, I was excited for the shout out you were about to do, but no, yeah, we can get into like the production and the themes and stuff later. So you should take it away.
Okay, great. Banditsemporium.com is the official t-shirt partner of Camp Kaiju. They are back. They are our co-sponsor again for the remainder of this season. Their t-shirts are super comfortable, first and foremost, but second most, they feature cool Camp Kaiju artwork. We have a Frankenstein design, we have a vampire design, we have a Godzilla Reptar inspired design, and with more coming. So that's really exciting. And you can get a 10% discount by using promo code Camp Kaiju at banditsemporium.com. As they say, we sell shirts. As we say, let's just stay campy, y'all. All right. Nice.
Stay campy, my friends.
Yeah. For production with this film, it's crazy. Like there's so much, like with a new film, there's just so much information to be had about the production background and the history and all that. So ironically, I didn't add a whole lot to the notes. Steven Spielberg is an executive producer. What I think is really interesting is that Colin Trevorrow has returned after helming the first Jurassic World. Because what's his name?
Bayona.
Yeah. So J.A. Bayona directed Fallen Kingdom mixed reviews. What'd I say?
No, I apologize. I said the Lost Kingdom before, and it's called Fallen Kingdom. So I was correcting myself.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Do either of you have more to say about why Bayona was replaced or why Trevorrow came back? I couldn't really find too much.
I read that Trevorrow was excited to like finish out the story. Like he had an idea in mind from the start of Jurassic World. And he, at least according to what he said in interviews, like he wanted to sort of like come back for the final installment and like, you know, tell the original story that he kind of had in his mind. That's what I read. Is that what you read also, Gary?
Well, it's also, it's important to note, like he was gonna do episode 9 of Star Wars. And then left due to the classic creative differences of that film.
Sorry, Trevorrow left.
Left? Colin Trevorrow had for a while was developing and working on episode 9. There is actually a legit leaked script out there for people listening. If you're curious about what Trevorrow's take was on episode 9 of the Star Wars saga. Sorry, when I say episode 9, I'm talking about Star Wars. So I do wonder, like, that's a big reason maybe he wasn't involved with the second one. And then was like, okay, that fell through. I'm going to come back now and do Jurassic World. And everything Matt's saying sounds like correct to me. I will say, like, with J.A. Bayona, you know, I think the Fallen Kingdom, I'm kind of mixed on it, but I do like the direction of the movie. I think in terms of the other 2 films, I think it's the best directed in terms of some of the, I felt genuine thrill watching that movie, even if I didn't think it was like super smart or, you know, the best. I still like in terms of like the action sequences, and then especially when you got into the haunted house segment of the film in the third act where they're just I thought that was really cool. Oh, okay, they're in a house and there's a dinosaur stalking them. That's interesting, and it was well done in that way. So I do want to give a shout out to J.A. Bayona, just like with some of his directing prowess to that film.
I feel like Fallen Kingdom, as clumsy as it is in a lot of places, I did appreciate a unique take and different choices on the tried and true of just, oh, we're in a park and dinosaurs are running amok, which, hey, what do you know, is what we got with Dominion. I don't know if it's a coincidence that we also have the same director, but he clearly has a sandbox that he is comfortable in. Does that make for risk-taking direction? I don't know.
I think there's a little bit more visual style too, and I think this is kind of what Gary was alluding to, you know, in Fallen Kingdom in the second one. Yeah, like I just remember some sort of like almost Del Toro like touches, like gothic horror elements or whatever, which
Yeah.
I think Bayona did really well in The Orphanage, also one of his earlier movies. So I think he's a talented director, and I think Bayona has a lot of skill for like visual storytelling, which I don't think that Dominion or the first Jurassic World movie have quite as much, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm itching to get to our breakdowns, but I think we should explore what little thematic threads there are slash the form and aesthetic and special effects and things like that.
Yeah, let's set it up. Let's set it up so we can dig in,
Great. Yeah, Matt.
Oh, I'm equally excited to talk about themes. I'm ready. Should I just dive into it?
Yeah, go for it.
Probably like the first and most obvious one is man versus nature, which obviously has been a standby in the series since the beginning, as well as the books. And just the idea of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, and playing God and all that. There's a lot to say about that. What do you guys think about that theme? Which is maybe a little bit overly familiar, but unique in these movies.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, this is the 6th film in the total franchise now, saying sort of the same general theme. So on one hand, it does seem a little trite at this point. So yeah, I'm trying to think like what does Dominion have to say new about it? What can it add to the conversation? It's a great question.
I do think, when you're talking about how do you make a franchise, because this has become a franchise, and what from the first movie makes it a franchise, it is these things of man versus nature, man's hubris. And even at 5 years old from the first movie, I do remember, even if I couldn't articulate it in this way, but I do remember understanding it on some level, like, yeah, adults did something wrong. Adults did something really cool and also really wrong.
Yeah.
It came at a cost. It came at a price. So it's like, you have to, if you're going to make a franchise out of that, you have to follow that through. And something I will say with, and maybe I'll get more of this in our breakdown, but something I do, if I could say something good about the Jurassic World franchises, it does sort of run with that a bit in terms of corporations and corporate profit and using scientific discovery for profit and the classic lines what Jeff Goldblum says, Ian Malcolm says, we're so preoccupied with whether or not we never stop to think whether or not we should. And I do think that is a theme that runs through the franchise. So if there's something positive I want to say, it would be that they take that and try to apply that to the films.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like even Jurassic Park, The Lost World, the role of corporations in shaping scientific endeavor is central. What I wanted to circle back to in terms of man versus nature, I think what Dominion is actually trying to say is that it's not us versus them. It's really how can we work together. The ending of Dominion is it's not. What I'm going to say is going to sound critical, but it's not. But it seems like a very hippy dippy, like we're all living in harmony together. And there's like shots of mammals and dinosaurs and birds and it all comes off a little preachy for me.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I think that is the heart of Dominion's thematic messaging, that it doesn't have to be an apocalyptic scenario. And in fact, we need to cooperate with nature if we're going to survive.
I I think you're right. I think like I would just add that, like man and nature can coexist as long as corporations don't completely destroy everything. Like to me, that was kind of the theme of the movie, and like sinister corporations have been like a villain in sci-fi and various kinds of movies for a long time. So that's nothing new. But I feel like it's kind of gotten a little bit more prevalent recently. I'm thinking of like Don't Look Up, the movie from last year, with the sort of like Amazon like corporation and the so like I think that's an important theme now to say like these like uber powerful corporations aren't out for the good of the planet. They're only out for themselves. Like that's an important theme. But also it does like when you have like a huge massive blockbuster like this, which costs so much money to make and is really mostly interested in like making box office money, like it does feel a little hypocritical. It's like corporations are evil in the movie, but the corporations that funded this movie and distributed it are great. Let's make as much money as possible. So it's just part of the industry,
Right. So how much does that have an impact on the artistic agency of those involved? I don't know. It was like Trevorrow and Emily Carmichael interested in writing a deeper film, but maybe, it's just the pressure of the business. And they're like, we are limited in our ability to take risks because there's so much money involved and reputations and this, that, and the other.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
I want to say, I want to add on to the man versus nature, human versus nature, if you will, about this aspect. And this is getting a little personal critique time. I was cackling to myself in the movie theater watching the message of peaceful coexistence with dinosaurs, which I think are different than peacefully coexisting with, whales or mammals or, animals in today's world. I think it's hard to, I'm just going to re-edit all this stuff. I think it is a stretch for me as an audience member to be given a message of coexistence with animals when the animal I'm being presented with is a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a Velociraptor or a Pteranodon that's just killing people. These are monsters, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, and I think like if you are gonna have that theme, you could do something kind of interesting with it, like questioning if that's ever even possible, like if the movie did that, I'd kind of respect it a little bit more. But yeah, it has this totally naive vision of just like everybody getting along perfectly, and that's not really the way it works. Yeah,
I don't know that. Yeah, that's just my take on it. How are we feeling with themes? Are we good?
I just want to point out it is interesting, these big production companies sort of trying to make a point, sort of an anti-capitalistic point while also being capitalistic themselves. And this is something I struggle with, I in watching movies. I struggle with the Marvel films, it's just this big machine. I love these films, but also I don't always love how much they dominate. And I think it's interesting that we bring that up. It is the message just kind of superficial, rather than trying to get to something deeper and all that.
Yeah, and I think you can have great movies made by huge corporations, of course. I feel like that's happened very frequently throughout the history of movies. But yeah, it is kind of that constant tension, right, between like the creative vision and like the profit vision and like the corporate vision, kind of butting heads. And it's one of the interesting things about cinema, which takes so many resources to create it. But yeah, it can make it difficult, I think, to make something truly novel and original and unique, especially in this kind of huge mainstream context.
Yeah, and that is sort of like why I'm such a Spielberg hasn't always made great movies, right? Some of his movies are bad, but that's why I'm such a huge fan of him, because he's made these populist movies that have great themes, but also just like are totally within the studio model and appeal to such a wide audience. And why I'm such a huge fan of the original. Just going back to that.
Do you think it's possible that Dominion could have been totally independent from the legacy in which it was following?
Probably not.
That's kind of a shame.
I just, if you're part of such a huge franchise as Jurassic Park, everybody's going to have their expectations and things they want going into it. And I wish it could be too, but that just seems like it would be kind of impossible.
I think it would be better if it was.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. I think it would be better if it did sort of try to not replicate the first one, but try to capture what made the first one great in the first place. And I mean, it's hard for me to fully articulate what that is, because I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a but I think if they and again, not imitate, but try to understand what was the magic of the first one, that mixture of awe and terror, which is really what the first one is. And can we, and I do think there was, and we'll get more to this, but I do think there was opportunity with this one that I think they missed. I think it was going to be it was going to be a high bar to meet, but still I think they fell very short. They fell shorter than I expected, actually. And we'll get more into this, but actually with the original cast returning and with the setup of the dinosaurs being out in the world, I expected this to be the best of this trilogy, and for me it was the worst, actually, unfortunately. But we can get more to that later in our breakdown. But
all good. I don't think you're way off base there. I think that's a view held by a majority of critics, at least. Box office would tell you a different story. It's hugely popular dollar-wise.
Yeah, it's extremely popular franchise. Yeah, these movies all are making $1 billion. It's crazy.
So then what's the incentive then for artistic agency, for risk taking? Because ultimately they are achieving their goals and they are staying employed.
They brought Colin Trevorrow back because look what he did with the first one.
Yeah.
No,
it's a good point. I think you're right, Vincent, about like what is the incentive. And Gary, you brought up Star Wars before, and to me, a really great recent example of a huge franchise movie that made a lot of money, obviously, but also to me, like took the series in an interesting direction was the one that Rian Johnson did, which was The Last Jedi, right?
Yeah.
I love that movie. I think it's great, and I know a lot of Star Wars fans kind of picked it apart a little bit, but that to me is like a very, very, very good blend of mainstream entertainment, but also trying to do something unique and original with the mythology of the series, and
I would share that opinion. I would share that perspective with you. Yeah, I think it's absolutely the best of that new trilogy, and I think there's problems with that trilogy overall, but that movie that's just like a good movie. That's just like a visually, thematically, like moment-wise, cathartic-wise, just like an incredible experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was hoping that Dominion would have that kind of blend of, making the fans happy, but also trying to do something unique. But sadly, that was not the case.
Can I tell you where I don't know if like presenting the movie I wanted to see is a fair form of criticism, just like, the art of criticism. Nonetheless, the movie I wanted to see was a world where dinosaurs are the dominant species again on Earth, and man or humans have been relegated to a primitive state again. And it's like, then the story is, how does humanity fight back? How, maybe it's like and like the Planet of the Apes series comes to my mind in that regard. But for me, that opens doors to a whole world of possibilities. You can tell another trilogy about that story, and it would not be, again, escaping from a park terrorized by dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Well, and let me ask, did either of you, obviously this movie got delayed, COVID pandemic, I think it was originally for 2021, got delayed a full year, but they did release a short directed by Colin Trevorrow called Battle at Big Rock. Did either of you watch that? It's quite good. It's better than anything in the movie, and it's just a family and they're at a campsite, and then a T-Rex stumbles in the campsite, starts fucking shit up. I don't know if I can swear on this. Starts messing, really messing things up. And it's thrilling. It's really well done. It was just like, it was put on YouTube by Universal. It's just like, here's a little preview of what to expect. This is the world. This is something in between Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, because it's just normal people and then dinosaurs. And that's sort of the opportunity that you had with this movie. It is, and I'm not saying you needed a new cast or anything, but again, to what you're saying is, I think we were all expecting, based on what happened, it's like, oh, okay, dinosaurs are out there, they're gonna spread and they're gonna procreate and multiply.
It seemed like a fresh take
Yeah.
on an exhausted conceit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was not the case. It was not to be.
Yeah, we find ourselves in the third act in just another enclosed dinosaur park.
Seen that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to give away any like true spoilers here, but like it's uncanny how similar the ending to this movie is to the original Jurassic Park. There, and again, I won't go into more detail than that, but it's like you're taking pages from almost that screenplay, or at least that blueprint. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, like okay, all right. So we're getting into our breakdowns now. It sounds like. Are you guys cool with that?
Yeah.
There's nothing too interesting about the form or the aesthetic of the movie. That's my summary of that section.
Yeah, and like anything else.
I think some of the stuff we can get into our good. I think some of the stuff about form and aesthetic might apply to that good
same.
section and all that.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think the good, for me, the good, bad, and the downright campy, everybody. Here we go. I think there are moments that generally captivated me. They were few and far between, but I did appreciate the use of animatronics in this film, which I noted was a stark difference from the previous Jurassic World movies. And I just love seeing practical effects. I've got more.
Agreed.
There was one truly, in my opinion, one truly thrilling moment in this movie. It was when Claire, Bryce Dallas Howard, was being stalked by that dinosaur with the long talons, and she like submerged herself. I think that was the only like truly like frightening scene in the film, but it was nice.
Yeah, that's the same scene, right? Where like there's like the close up of that shrieking dinosaur. Is it a Dilophosaurus? I should not try to say the name because I will not remember it. But the one with
I was also just thinking Dilophosaurus. From the first one.
No, Dilophosaurus is the spitter.
Yeah, but that's what you're saying, right?
That's what I thought it was. That's not?
But she comes across the Gigasaurus, I believe.
Yeah,
and that's what Vince is referring to.
Like long nails,
which is crawling into the swamp water. Yeah, that is very thrilling. That's that's well done.
But in a 2.5 hour movie, there should have been more.
Yeah, it's pretty bad ratio. Oh man.
Do you want to go through the good for each, or are you going to go through your good, bad, and
No? We'll all talk about our good.
Oh, okay, great. Should I go?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'll say that. Yeah, I would say like the Dilophosaurus scenes actually. It's funny that you say that. I'll start by that. Those are actually really good. That with Claire was good, and then also spoiler warning. I love. I will appreciate how I appreciate how in recent years an antagonist has been more. Our antagonists have been deeper. They've been more empathetic. I like how in this, our antagonist Dotson was just kind of a shithead. He's just kind of an asshole, weirdo. And I like how he gets his at the end at the hands of the Dilophosaurus. I enjoyed that scene. That was a good practical effect dinosaur kill scene. I did like the practical effects in this movie.
Yeah, I read that the Dilophosauruses there was no CGI for those creatures.
Yeah.
Those were all practical.
I enjoy the practical effects because again, there's a great history of that with the merging of the animatronics and the CG in the original film. Overall, I do have to say with this trilogy is an interesting one, and obviously there's more specific criticisms I have of this. But I do like the effort to make this like a little bit bigger. Jurassic Park 3 in 2001 sort of really brought it to a small scale. And it's just kind of a throwaway movie. It's not a horrible movie. It's kind of thrilling and a good monster flick. But it just sort of takes this like epic, awesome blockbuster and just kind of makes it almost a directed DVD thing.
Yeah.
Or direct to video thing. Mm-hmm. And I do appreciate the producers and Colin Trevorrow trying to we're gonna make this big summer blockbuster epic out of these movies. I appreciate that effort. And you do feel that in this, even if it is kind of boring and disappointing, but you do feel there's that attempt in this, and I do feel like they do. Again, I have specific critiques of this, but they tried to follow up with, we're bringing Biosyn into this. We're bringing back the corporate spy Dotson character from the original. Mm-hmm. We're tying it back. Mm-hmm. We're showing you that there's been this effort by these nefarious people to exploit scientific discovery for profit at the expense of human life, at the expense of animal life. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would have to say is the good. Fun to see our original friends back. Grant, Sattler, Malcolm, though I also have some things to say about that specifically. But still, I do think it was a smart choice to bring them back in general. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I'm with you guys about the animatronics, the practical effects. I think that works extremely well. The Dilophosaurus. Why do I try again? Dilophosaurus. Those are probably my favorite dinosaur scenes in the movie because it's a little bit smaller. It's not like we have all this CGI to throw at you and this like biggest creature known to man. It's a little bit more like low key, and I think that makes it more suspenseful somehow with those particular dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. I would also say that there's a stretch in the middle of the movie that's probably about 20 minutes, something like that. And I feel like maybe this will be in the bad category for you guys, as I think Vincent kind of alluded to this, but it's just like sort of like a spy action scene where there's like a ton going on. There's like
the Malta scene.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that is one of the more. I would also that's also like for me one of the better sequences of the film.
Yeah. No, it feels it does almost feel like it belongs in a different movie, but that's maybe why I'm glad it was in this movie.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. It's fairly well done in terms of like the action and like it's very fast paced and everything. So I really like that segment of the movie a lot.
No, I agree. And I didn't mention it because the Malta scene, the black market scene, I think is a standout set piece. I think this is that's the movie I wanted, where we see how how humans have co-adapted these dinosaurs. And of course there'd be a black market. And the raptor motorcycle chase is like, that's high octane. That's great stuff. That's the best stuff Chris Pratt does in the film.
Yeah,
Those
because he
those
doesn't
20
have to say
minutes.
dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, love those moments. Good stuff. What didn't work so well for you guys in this motion picture?
Everything else. I know that sounds very glib, but I just think the dialogue is pretty bad. Most of the characters are extremely thin. Like there is this tension in the movie between there's the three characters from the original, Malcolm, Statler, and Grant, who there's the big reunion. So that's kind of one storyline of the film. And then there's also the newer characters of Owen and Claire and Maisie. And there's this weird tension between those two storylines, but the thing is, like, I didn't care about either of them. Like, I feel like all the characters are pretty thin. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, but I feel like that is kind of like the biggest tension for me, and the fact that I was not engrossed in the plot at all for the most part.
I'll agree with that. I think the worst thing I could say about this movie is that I felt bored by it, which that was the biggest bummer, right? Because like we go into these movies, okay, at least this can be dumb fun. Like Godzilla versus King Kong, that's a dumb movie, but I like it. I like it a lot. It's fun, and it just captures my imagination. It makes me feel like a kid in a way that this movie does not. And all the good things I have to say about it, like also a bad stuff, like the Malta scene, like they could have gone further with that, and that also just like sticks out kind of like a tumor. All of a sudden, we're in a spy James Bond movie, which is like the woman playing what was her name? I got it right here. It was
The black market dealer.
yeah, it was Deshaun Lockman playing Sayona Santos. So yeah, it was this like who's this like woman in white, sort of femme fatale. That's I liked that as an idea, but it stuck out like a sore thumb in this movie. So
yeah.
that made me roll my eyes a little bit. As much as that actor was doing a great job of that character, right? Like, I think she was doing it great, but it was just was just weird to me. And that scene was thrilling with the we got motorcycles through a city and dinosaurs chasing, but I think it was undercut by also some bad visual effects work as well. And then sorry, what you?
Oh, there were times where the Raptor CGI wasn't distractingly bad, but there were moments where I was like, it's a little rough.
When we had a close up of a person like on a back of a vehicle, and then there's obviously like a screen behind them.
Yeah.
There's ways to kind of, you can do better than that these days.
Yeah.
I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
and and I mentioned how I enjoyed watching the original three come back, but I just don't think they were very well used. And we had talked, I don't know if they phoned it in or if it was bad dialogue, but they just didn't feel like the same characters from.
That's my sorry, Gabe, that's my main critique.
Yeah.
Like if I had to pick one, it's that, yes, of course, it's refreshing to see those three great actors on screen, like the band's back together, but they were not helped by a great script. The script didn't seem to treat them like the same characters, just as what you said. I don't believe that Dr. Grant would be bumbling around a secret laboratory like he's Ethan from Mission Impossible. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
And if he was, he'd seem more competent, because what we saw of him is that he's always, and the first one is that he's, he is sort of an irritable, scientist type. But when he's under stress, he's actually cool as fuck. I mean, he's just really,
yeah.
And that's what makes him interesting. That's what makes him compelling. Is he's this normal, he's this very smart but also normal dude who absolutely rises to the occasion. And this, it just
along the lines of the script, I felt like the script had sequences that just happened without any true qualifications to them. Like they're trying to escape from the three. They're in the car, the train car. They're trying to escape. And all of a sudden the car breaks down and they open the doors and now they're in a cave.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's just throw this into it. because Dr. Grant is also apparently doing his best Indiana Jones impression. Yeah. And I was like, what? This movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It's
because there's this line, right, where he's like, oh, these are the cave, like where he knows what's happening. It's like, why would you know?
You don't know what's happening.
He's like,
nothing is justified in
something. And I'm like, okay. I remember the two of us laughing at that part. Yeah.
Yeah. The movie for me it flirts with wanting to be an action adventure thrill ride, which would have been great. It also flirts with trying to be a traditional Jurassic Park movie, which would have been great had it done, elevated itself. But it tries to be too many things, including the cast. I think the ensemble is filled with individually interesting characters, but there's too many of them and too little screen time, and you can't get invested in anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, in our original, I mean, I never found them I never found them to be that interesting in the first place. But Owen and Claire are just, I mean, they're just nothing in this movie. I mean, Chris Pratt, I mean, and I can say a lot about Chris Pratt. I feel like I don't like him in these action roles that he's found himself in. He can be very charming and funny, and he's just none of that in this movie. He's just boring.
I think you said it really well when you said they're just nothing, because there's like nothing to them aside from like, he's a wrangler and she's like releasing trapped dinosaurs or whatever. And aside from that, we know like nothing about them. They're like history, their likes, their tension, like their flaws, none of it. And I think in the original Jurassic Park, like there is like this family tension between Ellie and Alan, right? Like she wants kids and he doesn't really, and that's kind of like the subtext of the entire movie in a way, like propagation or whatever. And they're like nothing half as intelligent as that is going on in this movie,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you just love those characters. You walk away from the original being like, I like these people. They're fun to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely about like the children. It's like how Grant doesn't want kids and then he has to take care of these kids. It's like, it's simple, but so effective.
And see, what's so interesting is that they do mirror that family unit in Dominion with Chris Pratt and Bryce Howard and Isabella. That's her actor's name.
Maisie.
Maisie.
Yeah, Maisie. Well, Maisie Lockwood is the
character. Yeah. But see, that's the difference between the Jurassic Park script and Dominion script. Not saying one is inherently better than the other in terms of like crafting this relationship. But in Dominion, both the mom and dad of the unit are largely on the same page, which eliminates the conflict that works so well in Jurassic Park. And conflict is just what makes good stories. We want to see people overcome conflict, and I was like, great. They know what they want to do. Good for them.
And Maisie is given nothing to do. I mean, she is set up to be such an important character. She's a clone human, but really she's just a MacGuffin in this movie. And that really I thought that idea was pretty stupid to begin with, but I was open to, right? Like in Fallen Kingdom, I thought that was a pretty stupid twist. But I was like, okay, maybe there's something they could do with it in the next movie, right?
But then they don't do anything with it.
They don't. They do absolutely nothing with it. Yeah.
And it kind of makes it so that you need to have seen the previous Jurassic World movies to understand what's going on. There's like a little bit of a plot rehash in this movie, but like for the most part, even though I saw Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, I barely remembered them. So I was like, wait a minute, who is this girl again? And why do we care what happens to her? And I don't really feel like a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World movie, like you should have had to see like the previous movies to understand it. It should not be that way, I think. It should like, it's all part of a franchise, of course, but it should be kind of like a standalone thing at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a pressure to make franchises these days connect to each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I personally don't really like it. Yeah.
Like the original Indiana Jones trilogy or any of the James Bond. It's just great to have one-off stories.
Yeah. Yeah, and they can like talk to each other and connect with each other, but it doesn't have to be this like big sprawling like serial narrative,
Because if you don't do it right, you get caught in your own web and you paint yourself into a corner.
Yeah.
And then the whole sort of scaffold just falls down on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That totally happens with this movie.
Yeah. Well, that's great, guys. Let's move on to campy and then we can wrap it up. Cool.
Campy. Well, I'll start up. But what brings to mind for campy is the antagonist Dodson. I haven't quite figured out how I feel about him because, like, he is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like he has the weirdest performance, and I actually think Glenn Campbell. I've seen him in other stuff. I like Glenn Campbell. He's like one of those actors. It's like, oh, it's that guy.
Campbell
It's
Scott.
that guy. Huh?
Campbell Scott.
Exactly.
Glenn Campbell was
Glenn Campbell's another person.
in True Grit.
Yeah, True Grit. Yeah. Campbell Scott. Yeah, I've seen him in other things. He's one of those actors like, oh, it's that guy. I actually like what he's doing. I just don't think it's directed super well. I think like a lot of the direction in this movie is kind of bad and awkward. But I do feel like he is trying to do something a little eccentric and weird with the character and just be kind of an aloof asshole, tech genius, corporate type, who doesn't care about other people at the expense of profits. And he has some elements of camp. When we talk about campy, I feel like there are elements of camp in his performance that that I enjoyed. Yeah. And then there's comedy in terms of bad camp. There's comedy that just doesn't always land as well as it wants to. As it wants to. I think there's some. I love Jeff Goldblum. I think he does his thing, and there's some great stuff with him. But I also think there's some comedy with him that doesn't land the way it needs to, and the way that he lands in other stories, and like in something like Ragnarok, and Thor Ragnarok, where he does his thing, and it just lands because it's executed well,
Yeah. Like the line Jurassic World, not a fan, like, which has already, I feel like, become like one of the more popular lines in the movie. It's like, to me, seemed just like way too wink wink, like this is like a bid to the fans or whatever, did not like it.
Because it almost seemed too that line almost seemed too self-detrimental, where it was like, but honestly, nobody's a fan of this. Why?
Why are you reminding us of that?
Yeah, if you're willing to admit it, then you should make you should try harder at making a deeper movie, I suppose.
Yeah, one that actually can rival the original movies.
I have one campy thing that I loved so much at the beginning when we were still getting snippets of dinosaurs in the real world. I'm back on that train, that soapbox. I won't get off it. But Chris Pratt was a cowboy and they were wrestling up some dinosaurs. And I was like, I want to see a cowboy and dinosaur movie more than anything in my life. Doesn't need to be a Jurassic Park movie. That is a sub genre that needs to be more available to people.
Well, I'll say this, The Quiet Place, they're flirting with they're having a spin-off, the day one.
Yeah.
And I would personally be fine with Jurassic Park being done. But if they need to make more movies, I think that if they wanted to be successful, fans like us, that would be the way to go, is just have a good, there's so much opportunity. Just make a good, yeah, something like that, like a human story in a world where dinosaurs exist. That could make something special. I don't need them to, but if that's what they were gonna do, that would be it, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe not have the or any of those other new cast, personal, intimate story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a brief moment towards the beginning of Dominion where there's like a construction crew that's trying to get a dinosaur like out of their sight or whatever. And they have like an emergency vehicle to kind of like deter the dinosaur like down the street. And I was like, all right, that's kind of interesting. Like that's not what I expected to see in a Dominion movie. And I feel like that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, Vincent. Like, how would it actually play out if they did coexist with us? But then of course the rest of the movie doesn't have anything that's creative, I don't think, in terms of visualizing that coexistence.
Yeah. If you guys are ready to give it a rating.
Can I add one more campy thing?
Oh.
I didn't add my campy thing.
Sorry,
yet.
I wasn't sure if that was your campy or not. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. It's one line spoken by Laura Dern, and I love Laura Dern. I think she's a fantastic actress in Marriage Story and Blue Velvet and so many movies. But I do kind of feel like maybe she's phoning it in this movie a little bit. And there's one line where she says to Dr. Alan Grant in like this scene that's full of exposition, and I wish I remembered it verbatim, but it's something like, the only crops that weren't affected were the biosyn crops. And like I expected like a dun 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 like sound staying on the soundtrack, and just like the way she says that line is very, very ridiculous. That's the campiest moment to me.
That whole moment when we were introduced to her, I was like, what the heck is going on in this movie right now?
Yeah, the locusts were like, what is happening? I mean, they do explain it, but I actually did turn to Vince and was like, how did locusts, because we're meant to assume that like locusts have somehow evolved out of this situation.
Yeah.
Right.
There was another line like about her being like, oh, he slid into my DMs. That was another situation where it's like the writing was like, you're getting too naughty, you're too knowing, you're too, just like knock it off with that.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Absolutely.
No, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I cringed. I literally cringed in my seat.
Yeah, I don't know if they're trying to like engage with the younger audience or something, but that's not the way to do it. Like, just like awesome dinosaur scenes are kind of the way to do that, you know? So
making a good movie, that's the best way to engage with any audience.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, just make a good movie.
All right. So, Matt, how you feeling? You ready to
go? With my final verdict, I am ready. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Gary, does this movie, is it just a timeless classic? Does it stand the test of time? Will it stand the test of time, I should say? Does it have some flaws, but overall it's great and you can see it standing the test of time? Or, it does have a lot of fun moments, but ultimately it's probably not going to stand the test of time. Or it's not worth revisiting. It will not stand the test of time.
Well, I gotta say, it is a part of this franchise. It's gonna make a lot of money. It's a post-pandemic film. Personally, I don't know if I'll actually ever watch it again. I would though rate it as number 3. If you're a monster fan, if you're a fan of this franchise and you're a completist, go ahead, watch it, see what you think. There's a little fun to be had. It's a little historical, but yeah, I don't think it's much like many of the other Jurassic Park franchise sequels. I don't think it'll stand the test of time. No.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You want to go for it, Matt?
Sure. I'm sorry to be harsh, but I'm going to give this the lowest rating, I should say. It is not worth revisiting. It will definitely not stand the test of time, in my educated guess. Yeah, like normally I try to find like some good things to take out of the movie, and it is entertaining in like brief stretches, but not enough to warrant actually seeing it, in my opinion. And I don't think it works at all, and there weren't too many moments that really like affected me viscerally, you know.
Yep. I think I agree with you guys. I don't think there are enough redeeming qualities for it to bear repeated viewing. I don't think it will stand the test. I think test of time. I think it will perpetually be the lowest Jurassic Park World movie in my rankings, in a lot of rankings. With that said, if I was a 6-year-old, I'd probably love it. But even then, you still want more dinosaurs, I feel like.
Yeah.
So sorry to all the 6-year-olds listening to this podcast.
I feel like the moral of the story is just see the original Jurassic Park again, you know?
We've talked about that almost as much as this would.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Rightfully so, I think. Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with that movie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Gary, for hanging out.
My pleasure. This is a great time. Yeah.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it. And so Kaiju July coming up in July. Matt and I will be at G Fest in Chicago. And if you're going to be around on July 16th, a Saturday, come to G Fest and hang out with us. We're going to record a live episode about, is it Terror of Mechagodzilla?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Which I think is playing it's that Friday or Saturday in Chicago as part of the festival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe that's it.
Yeah, I think so too. So Terror of Mechagodzilla. And then before that, we'll have an episode out on Ghidorah or Ghidorah, the three-headed monster from 1964. And then at the end of the month, we're going to cover Rodan from 1956. All three of these movies are directed by Ishiro Honda. So it'll be like a cool thread to see his work from the 50s through the mid 70s. So we're very excited about that. Thank you for hanging out with us. And yeah, until next time, stay campy.
Thank you. See you later.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.